Thank you.
Can I jump in real quick? Pauline, I want to just pick up on something you said. I think that you hit it right on the head, which is that we just need enough people so that this becomes a viable alternative and something that people are comfortable seeing around. Chris mentioned that it's important that his IMEV is driving around the central business district of Sydney. From my perspective, the thing that cities can do as we think about it, Chicago's not providing financial incentives, but what we are trying to do is provide that infrastructure to make people feel comfortable. Even if it's not a pure placebo effect, it is in reality having quick chargers, having chargers at important places around the region, make people feel more comfortable that they're not going to be stranded, and that's going to help them feel more comfortable while using this technology. And to me, that's a much more sustainable way for governments to get engaged in this marketplace. At some point, as my colleague from Mitsubishi mentioned, 3 or 4 years from now, this has to be a self-sustaining market. And so what can we as government do to help create that sustainability for you to begin competing amongst yourselves? And I think that it's really about creating that infrastructure, looking for those leverage points where you can really support the private market to take off.
That's great. Thank you. What I'd like to do now is invite Robert back up to the stage to moderate the final part of this, the open debate. I'd like the panelists to stay where they are because you're going to answer all the difficult questions that are coming. But I'd also like to thank you for your insight so far. Thank you.
Wow, that was a cracking discussion for the last day of a very, very busy conference. We've got about 17 minutes left, and there's a bit of formality at the end, so that means we've got about 12 minutes left. And we've probably asked an awful lot of questions over the last few days, so there may not be that many more specific questions to ask. And I thought perhaps the best thing might be to ask if one or two people would like to just say what their takeaway from this conference has been, reflect a little bit on how it might have helped the dynamics within the C40 cities. And then, if there is another specific question, we'll take one specific question, but no more. Otherwise, I think I'll collapse. So, first of all, can I ask, are there would anybody like to say something about, just to reflect a bit on the last few days and how it's gone? Any volunteers? Must be somebody out there. Right, well, we got through that section very quickly then. In that case, we move to the next item. Okay. There are one or two people I know who may still feel they have actually something to put in. Is Albert Lamb in the room? Albert Lamb? Albert, have you got a point you wish to make? Somebody tells me you have. Yeah? Yes, it's coming.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time because I think the question is more important. Since I'm asked the question, that's different. I echo everything industrial colleagues said. EV is not, at this stage, is still early. It's like early adoption. But I just want to make a quick comment. It's about, I don't see enough in Asia. I don't hear enough in Asia. I don't hear enough in America about carbon taxing. In Europe, certainly, there is a lot of related. I always think that for wide adoption of EV, you need 3 parties playing together. I think you guys touched on it already. Government, the customer itself, changing the mindshare, and the OEM. OEM is all about scaling and changing their business model in terms of how we're going to charge the customer for it. And that, I think, our colleagues already touched on it. Government role is about stick and carrot. And when the carrots run out, which some of the country are already running out of carrots very quickly, you put in the stick. The stick is to penalize people using gasoline. And that is not enough. Not enough in Asia, not enough in USA. Because in Europe, there is carbon tax. Every mileage you do it on a gasoline car, there are tax. And at the pump, there are taxes as well. So I think, for instance, I was sharing DHL, and because they were looking to order a fleet of cars from us, and they were saying that just by switching 10% to 20% of their vehicle, fleet vehicle, into electric, they could save millions of euros a year on carbon, taxing on carbon. I would like to urge, if you have not already done so in terms of your cities and in your countries, please start looking at that area. I think it is a very important area to sustain the momentum of EV. And then the other is education. Again, I don't hear that much. I have a takeaway in terms of this conference. I learned so much in terms of how serious, in terms of the situation we are in terms of global warming. The first 2 days, in terms of all those scientists are telling us that, but I'm not hearing it from my government. I travel around the world all the time. I live on a plane. I don't see enough ads in Hong Kong. I don't see enough, although actually I still miss the yo on the ads telling people global warming. That's a good thing. But when I was in Europe, I don't see enough ads. I think the government's doing too much filtering to the public in terms of how serious the situation is in terms of global warming. And in terms of the people might still think that we have 50 years or 100 years, or it's not as urgent. The urgency is not put into the public as much. And I would like to see that more of that happening, filtered down in terms of maybe having more educational program or advertisement to cover that area. Then I think you will drive behavioral change. And behavioral change is about ownership. And although I'm a car maker, I don't want to say that being green is not buying a car. It's go on a bike and go on public transport. And that is being green. But I know it doesn't suit all of us in terms of not having our own transportation. But I really feel that the education side of things, as a government entity, as your city, you need to do a lot more. I just travel around, I don't see enough of that. And then customer behavior change. And OEM has that responsibility as well. In the past, all our OEM, I work for OEM, many OEMs, many times, long time. And it's about their built-in redundancy. Every 3 years, there is a facelift. Every 18 months, there is a minor change. Just to keep the customer going, is that Joe has just changed a new car. What are you going to do about it, John? You're going to keep up with the Joneses, or what are you going to do? So it's this built-in redundancy of saying that, oh, I'm only driving model year 2009. I am now driving model year 2010. So it's that competition between the consumer. That behavior will need to be changed. And I think I've taken a lot more time than I ought to, and I'll stop here.
No, those were very good points. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. I just want to make a comment. I mean, I know it's more aimed at the policymakers, and I'm definitely not a policymaker. But Albert, what you mentioned earlier, again, like I said, it came out in our focus group studies about, what motivates people. So you have two strategies. You either have a carrot or a stick. And in most instances, I think people respond better to the carrot. So it's like when you're teaching your kids. So I guess for policymakers, that has to be, an important factor to keeping their constituents happy. And we're happy to work with the government in any instance to try and make it as an attractive offer as we can, the value proposition and an appeal factor for customers. So that's the only point I want to make on this.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question on any subject from the floor. Okay, two. Gentleman there, and then the gentleman there. As long as they're brief.
Yes, I'm John Miles from Consultant Arup. We're here this afternoon to talk about promulgating the right policy. It seems to me that the policy ought to be about low-carbon mobility rather than about electric cars, although electric cars might be part of that equation. We're going to live with cars on our roads even if we have fantastic transport systems. That's demonstrated here in Hong Kong. You have a wonderful transport system, but you still have gridlocked roads. So surely our policies have to be designed to make the road use more efficient. So I'd just like to ask the question, what place does intelligent transport systems have within the thinking? Because if cars are intelligent and if we have intelligent road traffic management systems working, perhaps we can get more vehicles down the same infrastructure, and if they are also low-carbon vehicles, then we're really getting a win. I'd just like to ask the question.
I think we'll have to leave that as a rhetorical question, to which the answer is obviously it has a role to play, because otherwise we're going to be late for our tea. And the gentleman behind?
Actually, first I have a suggestion, and this for the since that Hong Kong's weather is very hot and the sun is always very shiny, will it be possible that we install a solar panel on the EV so that this can increase the cruising range and help? Yeah, and I'm not an expert on that area, but I just make a suggestion. And the second is a question. It is about, in the past, Hong Kong has many legislation involved in the transportation. Like we changed the taxi into the LPG engine, and we make all those taxi operating on the diesel fuel illegal in 2005. And I want to ask that would it be possible that legislation can be make use in terms of this transportation to change all those transportation like buses and minibus or taxi into EV so that this would be more convincing to the public, because the public will not want to be a part of the experiment if they cannot see the public transportation are using EV. And that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm not going to allow a long answer to that. The answer to the second point is once the vehicles are there, then you can start pushing people, whether it's with legislation or otherwise, in that direction. With LPG, there's a big series of tests to show that vehicles were there and viable, and then the compulsion was put into place.
Robert, can I say something? Here. Sorry.
If you're very quick, you've got 30 seconds.
Okay. Thank you for your question. I like your questions. That actually we have the solar panel. It's going to provide around 5 kilowatt per hour every day in the shining in the daytime. About for 8 hours shining time, it provides 5 kilowatt per hour to the car. It can run for around maybe less than 20 kilometers to 30 kilometers around there.
Okay,
and
Paul, thank you. Without being rude, thank you very much. In other words, it is out there, and the Jockey Club has got them on Khao Sai Chow on the golf carts as well. Now, I'm going to step a little bit beyond my brief because I don't think anyone has allowed time for someone formally to thank Civic Exchange for organising this conference. And we're split into two, and all we can do is go and have tea after this, and then I think for many of us the conference is probably over. So I just wish to thank Civic Exchange. I know Christine has been in the room, but I don't think she's here now. And Andy Lawson has been in the room. Yes, yes, the maestro. Thank you for being here, Andy. And Veronica, over here, has masterminded this session. And there are several helpers from Civic Exchange around. You represent everybody from Civic Exchange who's put in such an amazing amount of effort. This has been the most exciting conference. I know nobody really stepped up to the challenge, what's your takeaway? It's because it's such an obvious answer. It's been a fantastic conference. There's all sorts of ideas out there. We must all have at least 50 to 100 ideas to think about as a result of this. So Civic Exchange, thank you very much. And I will now hand over to Martin to do the formal wrap-up.